Hi, everyone, and welcome to SOW 6678 Grief and Loss in Social Work Practice. I am really glad you're here. This course is approaching grief really not as a checklist or a set of stages or a problem to solve quickly. Our work is going to be entering grief work as future social workers who will be asked to sit in that grief with people, with families, with communities, in some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. So this is very important work that we do, whatever level of social work we function within, right? Our main text for this course is Francis Weller's The Wild Edge of Sorrow. Here's what it looks like, and you can get it used very inexpensively. Rituals of Renewal and the Sacred Work of Grief. And this book is going to provide us our structure for the semester. He goes through 5 gates, and these 5 gates of grief are not just weekly topics, but they will become for us the beginning of a place of inquiry, and they will help us to really ask, what kinds of grief do people carry? What kinds of grief are recognized and what kinds are disenfranchised or ignored? What happens when grief is personal, or familial, or cultural, or spiritual, historical, systemic? There's so many ways that grief impacts us. And alongside Weller, we're also going to be engaging in multiple contemporary grief theory and clinical social work scholarship with evidence-based articles assigned each week. We're going to be looking at ideas like continuing bonds, meaning reconstruction is a big part of grief work right now, attachment and loss, ambiguous loss, disenfranchised grief, which I already mentioned, trauma-informed grief practice will be a big part of our conversation, as well as collective grief and grief across families and systems. You're going to be meeting and returning to the Alvarez family case throughout this course, and this case is going to give us a shared place to practice our clinical thinking. So rather than only talking about grief in theory, you'll note if you've taken my classes before, I am very case-based. We will use the Alvarez family to explore and analyze and really ask what we would notice as social workers and what questions we would ask, what might we misunderstand if we went too quickly. How do their culture and family roles and trauma and spirituality and systems, for example, shape the grief that we're seeing right in front of us in this case? And this is a fully online asynchronous course, so you're going to be moving through each week the modules on your own schedule while keeping up a lot of the posted due dates, okay? The modules are designed to be really consistent, to repeat week after week, to give you that hopefully consistent structure to rely on. And you can expect readings, instructor content, applied learning, interviews that I do with practice experts, as well as assignments that are going to connect directly to the gate we're entering in each module. The assignments are pretty experiential in this class, and I want to be really clear about what that means. That doesn't mean that you're going to have to disclose any personal trauma or grief or private family experiences. You will always have choices. And depending on the assignment, you may choose to work from personal reflection or from your professional observations. All of you have practice experience at this point. You can observe or analyze public memorials or media examples, cultural artifacts, literature, there's ritual, there's the case example that we're going to be exploring throughout the semester. So the work that you're doing never has to be personal, but it can be, and that will deepen your learning if that's something you can tolerate in this space and time, and I'll leave that for you to decide. Across the semester, your major assignments are going to ask you to move from experience to reflection to analysis to clinical implications, and you'll begin to recognize that journey as we do at every module. You'll complete a self of practitioner grief reflection. You'll complete an observation and theory analysis. You'll do an Alvarez family grief assessment on that case study. You'll analyze disenfranchised or ambiguous loss. And then you'll also do a ritual and meaning-making clinical response assignment. After you've completed all of those, you'll do a final integrative case formulation and clinical identity reflection, and that will get you to the end of the semester. So the assignments are not busy work. They're really scaffolded and designed to help you build the habits of a grief-informed social worker, currently evidence-based, at the current edge of our science and study. You're going to be noticing carefully, listening deeply, thinking clinically, as well as staying culturally humble, and really resisting the urge to rush people toward closure, because we're not here to end the pain that they're experiencing. We're here to help them endure it. You're also going to see in our structure a few studio weeks. And during those weeks, there's no new readings, no new lecture content, no discussion board. It's going to be intentional time for you to integrate what you're learning and complete your major assignments with more care. Because this course does deal with grief, death, trauma, culture, family, professional use of self, I invite you to move through this material really carefully and use your boundaries. Be honest with yourself about your boundaries and where you are in your life and what kind of stuff you can explore right now and what you need to leave compartmentalized while you learn this for your program, okay? Take the work seriously, but also take care of yourself. You're not being asked to turn your private life into course content here. You're being asked to develop awareness and steadiness and really an ethical presence that's needed for this grief work. And my hope is that by the end of the course, you're not going to know more about grief. You're going to feel more prepared to sit with grief and accompany grief in individuals, families, communities. As I record this video, I think of the collective grief our communities are feeling as we suffer tremendous losses locally here in South Florida. So welcome to SOW 6678. And this week we're going to begin by asking what it really means to enter grief work with humility and presence and care. So let's get started, and I'm looking forward to learning with you this semester.